Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Tottenham Hotspur are top of the table again. It seems to be becoming a bit of a habit. Let's hope it's one that continues for a while. It may not. You may be watching this and already Tottenham are off the top of the table. Obviously, it depends what happens in the Liverpool-Leicester game later this evening. But as it stands, Tottenham Hotspur are sitting high on top of the table. The first time Tottenham have done that after 9 or more games since January 1985. It's just funny the way football works, isn't it? But what a result! It was a really, really enjoyable game to watch in a very different kind of way. It wasn't one of those where you're blown away by incredible football, but it was one for anyone that enjoys like a tactical battle because you could just see it all playing out in front of you. It was so clever. It really was. I think it was weird for me was watching Spurs playing a football match, a competitive one, on a Saturday. Do you know that's the first time Spurs have played on a Saturday since March? So what's that, 8 months ago or so? Burnley won all the way at Turf Moor. It was the last time they played on a Saturday. Very strange feeling to now here we are on a Sunday. Talking about a Saturday match, it just becomes something that's just very unusual for Tottenham. But it was quite an unusual evening at the stadium, to be honest. So obviously, we lost Ray Clements this week, which desperately sad, very well loved figure, not just at Spurs, but other clubs as well, including Liverpool and certainly with England as well, England international. But what was interesting yesterday, you might have seen on social media the likes of Mark Falco, Ozzy Ardiles that have mentioned being at the stadium. They were allowed to kind of be part of the remembering Ray Clements. What happened before the match? There was a minute's applause, and very strangely, and I suppose it's not really connected to what happened in the first place, but there was just a bit of an atmosphere. And I think the legends, I don't know how many there were. I wouldn't imagine it was many because of current regulations or anything. I'm sure it was all done in the correct way, but there was quite just a bit of noise, and especially when Spurs were doing things well. And you're not going to replace 62,000 fans, but just to have that little bit of appreciation and applause when players did well, that wasn't just coming from the bench. I'm not going to go out there on a limb and say it contributed to the win, but it just added something, that little layer, and obviously maybe with that touch of poignancy about Ray Clements passing away, and it just that added thing before the game. All the players are wearing their shirts, charity shirts. Oh, so sorry, the charity's completely gone out of my head. Prostate Cancer UK, I think it was. I'll double check that afterwards. If I've got that wrong, I'll pop it underneath this video. And they all had those T-shirts on with Clements and number 1 on the back. I just thought that was quite poignant as well, that that some of his former teammates were there as well, and just a little bit of noise, just kind of gave you a sense again that this was a big game, and maybe we kind of lose that in the no crowd era that we've got right now. So that was quite different, but welcome. Just made us remember what it was like to have a bit of a noise in the stadium as well. And another thing I noticed that was slightly different, which you may not have picked up on your TV screens, was that Joao Sacramento was not on the bench. Where he was about 5-6 rows back, sitting at a desk. I presume, it might be something I'll ask Mourinho about this week, but I presume it was to have a better overview of what was happening on the pitch. And it's something I've never seen him do before during a game. Normally he's by Mourinho's side, but what he was doing, he was a little bit up. He was wearing a face mask and bashing away on like a tablet kind of thing. Because let's not forget, his background is he's one of the top tactical analysts in the game. That's kind of where he came through and studied as well. So he kept shouting down things. You saw Ledley King turning around, listening to him, and then passing on messages to Mourinho, or Mourinho himself turning and talking to him. Let me stress, I don't think it's anything to do with isolation or anything like that, because he was around other people. It wasn't anything like that. I think this was an actual move for him just to see how the game looked from a slightly higher position, and then being able to shout down and give instructions. And no arguing with the tactics on the day. Tottenham absolutely smashed it. This was the most blunt I've probably ever seen Man City. You know, people can throw stats at you. You know, 66% possession, 22 shots on goal. Man City had really is a perfect example of where stats really didn't tell you anything about the match in a weird way. 11 of those shots were blocked before they even got there by Tottenham feet and legs. I think only 5 of them were even on target, and pretty much the only shot that troubled or gave Hugo Lloris something to do was in those final moments with Ruben Dias' header from close range, which Lloris did superbly to show concentration to push it away. So that doesn't really tell the story. And Tottenham, in contrast, were just counter-attacking and picking them off. You know, 2 lovely goals. And what I would say, had they been a little bit better in that aspect, Tottenham, I think you could have seen another game like the Leicester one. That's the one that really sticks out in my mind, where people could throw the possession stats. I think Leicester had around 60-something on that day. Spurs just were brilliant on the counter-attack. You know, they did it against Southampton, early on against West Ham, at Old Trafford. Spurs' whole kind of the strength of the team does lend itself to this lightning fast counter-attacking style with, you know, now it's Kane's kind of sitting back slightly as that fulcrum playing the clever balls through, or on Ndombele or Lo Celso. And they can tear teams apart. And, you know, we said this, I think we said this in the last video. I think it was actually a question in the Q&A I did. And it's quite right that perhaps teams that prefer possession, actually, for Tottenham, that's an opponent they're probably more comfortable with rather than one they have to break down. And I do wonder whether, you know, Bergwijn had a good chance, a nice move where he just probably took one touch from maybe he should have hit a first-time shot, and his shot got blocked. I think he got tackled. Sonny took a little heavy touch when he rounded Ederson at one point. You know, that scoreline could have actually been crushing. You know, we could have been talking about 3 or 4-0 for Man City. But I have to say, I think there's often times when I'll be in that stadium in the past where we've seen, or White Hart Lane, we've seen, or Wembley, we've seen Spurs getting taken apart by City. We've seen them holding on for their dear lives. Didn't feel like that at all yesterday. It felt very much like Spurs defensively were very, very organised, very balanced, very disciplined. And I think I didn't really feel that Man City were going to break through, even when they threw on their substitutes and everything. And I think it kind of goes away to this whole myth, really, that Mourinho's finished. Mourinho's a dinosaur in a modern coach's game. You just keep seeing this, and it's like you do wonder how it must frustrate people that say that when he comes up with performances like this, because he's kind of showing. I wrote something today or last night where I used an analogy. This is very left field, so apologies for this. But have you ever seen the movie Superman 3? Richard Pryor plays a bumbling computer genius called Gus Gorman. And towards the end of the movie, he creates a supercomputer that studies opponents, identifies their weaknesses, and then uses it against them. Mourinho is that supercomputer. He really is. Every time Tottenham play a game of football, if you watch, they're playing a different way. They're always set up with their strengths in mind, but also the weaknesses of the opponent. You know, Pochettino, I was a massive Pochettino fan. You know, I don't really have to make excuses for that, but you know I was if you've ever read my stuff or watched my things. But with him, and he admitted this himself, his team he would set up for the opposition to worry about them. That was his philosophy. If we do things right, they're going to have the problems and they've got to worry about what we do. Mourinho, it's somewhere in the middle. It's we know what we can do, but also we're going to hit you where it hurts, and we're kind of capitalise on where we know your weaknesses are. And yesterday was an absolute example of that. You know, they know that City was struggling. I mean, City, they could say last season perhaps 2-0 Spurs, injury hit Spurs, to say that was a slight smash and grab. To be able to say that a second time, 2-0 result, no, you can't. You just can't. Because essentially, you haven't learned the lessons of the first one. You can get lucky once. You can't get lucky twice. Um, Spurs just had City's number. And, to let Son in the first 5 minutes with a ball over the top going through and score, I mean, that was just press and repeat. That was something that Son has done to Man City so many times. And that, any other manager, I mean, Guardiola may get criticised for it. I'll be honest, I haven't read too much of the stuff today, but not learning the lessons, or his team not learning the lessons of before. Son's got so many goals against Man City. It was a lovely goal as well. It was very clever. Again, quick free kick for Hojbjerg. Ndombele, little clever turn, took two players out of the game. First time, little chip ball over the top. Son runs through, nutmegs Edison. It was basic but beautiful. It was really, really lovely goal. And you could just see immediately everything Spurs kind of did. It just gave them that proper air of confidence. If they didn't have it before, it was like, okay, so we've shown that we can just do what we want here. We can, if we want, we can score goals. Now we've just got to tighten up, make sure we're strong at the back, and this game's ours. And it kind of never really changed from that feeling throughout the game. Even the VAR incident. The VAR, for me, I was actually quite surprised that there's been some debate over it, because for me, it's actually, I think there's been some really harsh VARs against decisions against, or even, I know Mike Dean went and looked at the monitor yesterday, but sometimes we're looking at accidental stuff. But for me, there felt like a deliberate motion of Jesus' his arm towards the ball to control it kind of in between his leg and his arm. So for me, that wasn't a unfortunate, natural motion. That actually looked quite deliberate to me. So I think certainly everyone in the media area looked at their monitors, and as soon as we saw it, it was like, well, that's not going to be allowed. So I was quite surprised that there was any kind of feeling that there wasn't, but there you go. There you go. So Spurs, 4 shots, 2 on target, 2 goals. That's pretty clinical. And this is the thing, you can't say, oh yeah, but that's what Mourinho's turned Tottenham into, because Tottenham are second highest scorers in the Premier League, joint best defence. I think it's joint best goal difference. So you're not talking about a team that is squeezing out 1-0 and 2-0 wins or anything. They're a team that have a lot of goals in them, but also we're seeing that defence tighten up now. We're going to talk about defenders individually in a little bit, but I think, I can't remember the stat, but I think it's 4 clean sheets in the last 7, and I think maybe only 3 goals conceded in the last 7. That defence has tightened up massively, and that was the area perhaps of concern for people. It was excellent. Like I say, I think for me it was similar in style to the Leicester game towards the end of last season, in terms of just picking off the opposition at every single opportunity. Just needed that little extra quality, and I think they would have added, more goals to what they came away with. But that Ndombele pass, I'm just remembering that in my head, that little movement and turn. It was very impressive. I mean, I think for me the key word yesterday was discipline. I felt every single player out there knew they had a job to do, and they executed it pretty much to the letter. That was actually my question. If you watched the press conference, I opened up the press conference asking Mourinho, how pleased are you with the discipline of your side? And he gave a really interesting answer, in that he was saying, yes, I was pleased with the discipline, but I was pleased with the fact that we not only had a plan, but we had an emergency plan. So what he was trying to say, and kind of went into, is that it's not just about being strong in knowing exactly what your job is in the moment. It's also about being able to react when someone on your team makes a mistake, and knowing whether it's your job to fill in, cover that space, get that ball back, and what to do. And he said that was what pleased him the most, was that they didn't only fulfil their primary objectives, they fulfilled their secondary ones and other ones as well. And he was spot on, because there weren't many mistakes. Certainly from a defensive point of view, Tottenham didn't make many, but when they did, you saw other players suddenly fly into view and make up for it as well. It was terrific. Let's talk about the back four. We'll talk about attacking players in a bit, but I want to give the defence their props, because I thought they were all superb. I want to start with Serge Aurier, a man who I have criticised in the past and gets a fair bit of criticism, and often that's for his concentration levels. Yesterday was perhaps a game where in the past you would have seen him giving away a silly penalty or getting caught up the field. And I think there was the other hurdle perhaps to overcome was that, if you look back to the win against Man City last season, it was Japhet Tanganga was playing kind of out of position on the left-hand side as a left-back, which allowed Aurier a little bit more freedom to get forward because the defence could shift across into a back three. But that wasn't the case yesterday. Sergio Reguilon was on the left-hand side. Matt Doherty, we know, obviously, unfortunately, tested positive for COVID, and he was out of the game. But the fullbacks were probably the most disciplined I've ever seen two fullbacks for Tottenham. And that's massive credit to Serge Aurier as well, who does have those tendencies to get forward. But he'd been clearly told by Mourinho, look, I know you want to, but today I'd rather you really don't go across that halfway line very much. I want you to sit back and just create this block, which they can't really get past. And I thought Aurier was excellent. He made so many interceptions, tackles, big headers. I'm trying to think if I can even remember him. I remember him making maybe one misplaced pass. I think maybe it led to De Bruyne's shot, but that was about it. Other than that, there was 1 inch perfect tackle in the area that really had to be spot on, and he made it. So I thought that was, I think if anyone saw the Amazon All or Nothing series, there was one moment, maybe against West Ham in the dressing room, where Mourinho told Aurier that he scares him in terms of he could give away a penalty at any moment. And I felt last night was a big indicator for Aurier, essentially showing Mourinho that you can trust me. If you tell me to do something, I will do it. And I think that bodes really well for his future as well. I thought he was very good against Man United. Perhaps a little bit iffy, I think it was against West Ham, but this was another big game where I think he's done very well. So yeah, massive credit to Serge Aurier. Reguilon on the other side, very similar. I think he had slightly more licence to get forward because his pace means that he can get back in position quite easily. I think he gave the ball away once in a little bit of a silly run up the pitch. So he kind of gave it away just near the halfway line. But overall, this guy's 23. He's taken to the Premier League like a duck to water. He's such a good player. Really is. He's got pace to burn. And I think the exciting thing about him is I feel his defending is as good as his attacking, which you don't always find with fullbacks. Either it's one or the other. And I think his all-round game is superb. So yeah, both fullbacks really impressed me. Centre-backs as well. Eric Dier, again, brilliant performance as a centre-back. I think he's really growing into this role. I think people like to criticise Eric Dier. It's like kind of almost fashionable. Make him the scapegoat if Spurs concede a silly goal. And yeah, of course he's going to make the odd mistake. But, he's a guy that is kind of learning or bedding into a new position. Mourinho trusts him fully. He's a bit of a leader in that back line as well. And I think he made some really important interceptions. And he always looks in control. These clean sheets are massive for him. He's playing there for England as well. He's getting a real run at it. I think we had this kind of propensity to sometimes just not give people time. And I think Eric Dier being given time, I think we're seeing more of these performances. He was superb at West Brom as well. It's just, and these were two very different attacks, West Brom and Man City he was up against. So yeah, it's no shock. I think give players a bit of time, let them develop, and you'll see the results. I'm sure, like we all do it in football. If he has a rough result, suddenly everyone will be calling for his head and be out of the team again. But I think he's got Mourinho's belief. There's a connection there, and I think you see that on the pitch. And then there was Toby Alderweireld. Toby Alderweireld, I thought, probably had the best game I've seen him have for years. He really did roll back the years. This was vintage Alderweireld. He was very good on the ball. He was cutting out. He made 2 terrific tackles on Gabriel Jesus in the first half. One in the box as he was about to shoot. One just outside the area. I thought he was phenomenal. And he had a part in the second goal as well. Played a very clever first-time ball out to Kane in the centre of the pitch. He was brilliant, which made it all the more frustrating that around, 81, 82 minutes, he just went down, and you knew he knew immediately that he had a problem. I asked Mourinho about that afterwards as well. He said it's his adductor muscle, which is kind of in the groin area, and he said it was bad. He said they're still waiting to see exactly how bad. They'll do scans and everything. What I would say is that Mourinho, maybe the slight pessimist in him, always goes for the worst possible scenario, and then maybe he's pleasantly surprised when it isn't. I saw Alderweireld tweeted something like, "Fingers crossed, it's not bad." We'll find out. Mourinho did say that Son was a bad one, and then he was only out for about, was it a week, 2 weeks maybe? The different kind of injury. So let's see what happens. But I do think it's a massive shame, because I just think that Alderweireld-Dier partnership was starting to become something. Because that's the beauty of it, is that although neither of them are blessed with pace, they have fullbacks on either side that have got a bit of pace about them. And it was working really well, as I say, as we see by the lack of goals conceded and those clean sheets. So let's see what happens. We'll hopefully have some news on that by the time Mourinho has his press conference on Wednesday, ahead of the European game. But no, as a back four, they were superb, and big shout out to Hugo Lloris as well. As I said earlier, very little to do all game other than he was dominant in his box, claimed a lot of crosses, made one odd punch, which I thought was a strange, like a diving punch. But then was there for the big Dier save, and that, I always say it, keepers in teams that are facing relegation always get a lot of praise because they face so many shots, and you see how many saves they make. For me, the measure of a top goalkeeper is to not have a lot to do, and then in the crunch moments come out with a big save, and he did that from close range. Real reaction save from Dier, so he's had a terrific season, I think, Lloris, so far. But on centre-backs as well, it's quite interesting. When I asked him about centre-backs, he said, we only have 3 centre-backs now and 2 in the Europa League because we don't have Joe Rodon. You'd presume he's talking about Dier, Sanchez and Rodon. He's kind of forgetting Japhet Tanganga. Japhet Tanganga's back in training, and hopefully he's back in a kind of a place where he can now start playing matches. I thought that was a bit of a strange oversight there. It's just in the moment. Perhaps he just forgot how many he had, but you'd hope that Tanganga... Rodon has certainly put himself into the mix to start at Stamford Bridge next weekend. He came off the bench, and in big circumstances, I think the biggest credit to him, the biggest thing you could say, you didn't really notice a difference in the defending, and I think that's massive. So he replaced Alderweireld, who had a brilliant game, and Spurs didn't really slacken in their defensive resolve at all. He did very well. So, by the looks of it, because he can't play in Europe either, I think he might start at Stamford Bridge if Alderweireld can't play. So that's big for him. Massive opportunity. But also, Tanganga should be there or thereabouts. Perhaps he'll get some minutes in Europe. You've got Ben Davies can play as a converted centre-back as well. And obviously, Davinson Sanchez has certainly dropped down the pecking order. Wasn't even in the squad yesterday. But you'd imagine he'll play on Thursday night. It's up to him. I think the beauty of this Mourinho team and squad right now is that you're not out of his plans. You're not. I know, we say, I saw a story saying Dele Alli's not in his plans. Ndombele wasn't in his plans. Look at him now. Ndombele, in that match yesterday, he just... how do I put it? I just smile every time I watch Tanguy Ndombele play. He does things that are so instinctive. It's just beautiful to watch. The turn and pass for Son's goal was just so natural. There's so many times. There's a lovely little highlights video someone did of all the touches he had of the ball in the game. Just the amount of times he gets the ball, Man City players just gravitate around him. They can't get the ball off him. He twists, he turns, he moves, he passes. He did it. He played for Lyon against them twice in the Champions League, and he was very good then. He really, he's such a player. But what I thought was important yesterday, and kind of a point of what I was saying there, his defensive work was fantastic. He made a lot of interceptions, tackles, pressing quite hard up the pitch. There were at times when he looked almost like he was playing as a support striker, sometimes in front of Harry Kane. He was high up the pitch, pressing, coming back, tracking. And when he came off around the 64, 65 minutes mark, he was knackered. But it wasn't a oh God, his fitness is terrible. It was because he really had flogged himself out there. And he came off the pitch and Mourinho gave him this really kind of heartfelt hug and put his hand around around the back of his neck kind of thing. And like I say, you're never out of unless you've done something truly awful. You're not going to be out of Mourinho's plans. It's on you to get yourself back in. And Ndombele is a perfect example to any of the players that it's Ndombele he wanted to leave the club. There's no, he's kind of admitted he didn't think it was going the way he wanted. He had to be convinced by Daniel Levy to stay, and he's turned everything around. And he was so good in what he had to do yesterday. And I think, as I said earlier, trust. He's built that trust with Mourinho, and he was fantastic. And then Spurs are in this beautiful position now where you can take off Tonga and Ndombele, and I was saying this to another journalist, you can bring on Giovanni Lo Celso, and it's pretty much almost like a like-for-like thing in terms of you've got the creativity, you've got the aggression. Perhaps Lo Celso is even more aggressive in the tackle, and you've got that work rate. And Lo Celso, was it 35 seconds? Kane spins around from Alderweireld's pass, drives up the pitch. Son and Bergwijn both made really clever runs, taking the defenders away. Kane puts the perfect pass into Lo Celso. He drills the ball home. I think it was his second touch he scored with. He was very good as well when he came on. Worked hard, ran as well. Just kept running at City to kind of put them on the back foot. And yeah, I just think Spurs have got so many options right now. I don't think you look at someone like Dele, and I don't think he can complain. I don't think he can complain that he's not in that starting 11 or making that bench, because I do think there's so much strength there, and it's down to him. Spurs won that match yesterday against Manchester City without Bale, Doherty, Ali, Lamela, Winks, Vinicius, and various other players that didn't play a role. That shows the strength of that team. But yeah, no, I was really impressed with Ndombele yesterday. And likewise with Son and Bergwijn, both in different ways. Spurs didn't have a lot of attacking opportunities, and like I say, there were a couple both of those players had that maybe should have done better with, but their work rate was superb. Bergwijn was, I'd got word the day before that he was going to be back in the team, and I think he gave everything. Again, I keep going back to his word, trust, but I think he showed Mourinho that, look, you want me to do a defensive job as well, like Lucas can. I think that's often Lucas has got in ahead of him because Mourinho's felt, well, he'll track back and work hard. I think Bergwijn showed that he could do that as well yesterday. He worked incredibly hard, getting back. You could hear Mourinho shouting his name a lot, and well done, and stuff like that, and the other players encouraging him. He did really well, and like I say, made that clever run with Son for Lo Celso's goal. I think there was a bit of a lost in translation moment with Bergwijn as well. When he was away on international duty, the way it was said by the Netherlands FA was that he's unfit, so we're sending him back. And a lot of people saw that as, he's overweight, he's out of shape and all that. That wasn't what they meant. He'd had a little injury that kept him out of the West Brom game, so he wasn't fit for international duty. He went there to be checked up, but he wasn't fit. So yeah, it wasn't like, he suddenly turned into this big fat blob or something. He's a very fit Premier League footballer, and you could see how he was out there yesterday. Certainly it wasn't a fitness issue as in stamina. It was a fitness issue as in that he had a little injury. I was really pleased with him. And Son, he's not the Premier League top scorer now. He was after the game until Calvert-Lewin scored a couple today. But 9 Premier League goals in 9 games. He's been superb. Like I say, I said in the last video, I do feel he had a little bit of a dip in his attacking form, but I do feel that in his work rate, he's just keeping it so high. And it's the old cliche, isn't it? If you work hard, opportunities will come. Really good from him. And then Harry Kane, kind of running out of superlatives for Harry Kane right now, aren't we? What's his name? Guardiola after the game called him exceptional. Mourinho said he hopes that Kane will change the way people look at strikers and see that it's not just about the goals they score. He said, we have a golden boot that they win if they score an amount of goals. But he said, for me, the top strikers are the ones that do everything. And Kane yesterday pretty much epitomised the team's performance. He battled, he won fouls, He dropped deep. He got the assist. He made a very clever little forward motion run to leave the space for Son to run in behind for the opening goal. He just, every time he gets the ball, he's a constant threat. City didn't know how to handle him. They didn't know whether to come out deep to follow him. They didn't know whether to launch into him. And every time they did, they won a foul. He's so clever in the way he uses his body to shield the ball. And you've got all of that. There's a lot of hard-working strikers out there. But then you've got the numbers on top. 13 goals in 15 games he scored and 11 assists on top of that. So that's 24 goals he's been involved directly in 15 games. He's got 9 Premier League assists. That's 5 more than the second place person, who is the much, praised right now, Jack Grealish. And Harry Kane has got 5 more. Is it 5 more? It might be 4 more than Grealish assists. He's an incredible player. He really is. And just everything about his game is raising. I think Pochettino can certainly take a lot of credit for helping create the Kane that we see now. But I do feel that Mourinho has added extra layers to his game. Almost said, and maybe perhaps it's Eriksen leaving has played a part. Perhaps Spurs have become so reliant on Christian Eriksen that they didn't realise they had a guy in Harry Kane who could do the Dane's role and his own, which is mad when you think about it. Perhaps that was in a weird way. And Christian Eriksen fans will probably go mad at that and say, what are you talking about? Eriksen provided so many goals for Kane. But I think that's a massive testament to Kane that Eriksen has gone and Kane is still scoring the same amount of goals. Absolutely mad. Sorry, I'm a little bit bunged up. You might have told by now. Here we are, 31 minutes into it, and I'm starting making funny noises. But, I think Kane is just getting better and better. It's just about keeping him fit. If they can keep him fit, he's going to have a big say in what things Tottenham could do this season. Who else do I want to talk about? I mean, just the victory itself was such a statement win. It was starting off this tough run of fixtures. You've got Chelsea up next, and then there's you've got Arsenal, Palace, Liverpool, Leicester, all of these teams to be faced. And I think to go straight into the one where perhaps there might have been the most dread, perhaps, even with recent results against Man City, there perhaps would be a feeling that, this team could score goals, but Spurs just were very, very good. And like I say, they're going to go into these games playing against opposition that perhaps will suit the way they play to their utmost strength. It's not to everyone's taste, Some people might not like the lack of possession at home. They might not like the lack of chances, but my God, it's effective. It really, really is. I thought this was a big indicator for me. I think we've seen a couple of these matches now where, again, I was a massive Pochettino fan and I just felt that he was unfortunate in certain moments. But I do think when you look at games like yesterday, you just see that next level. And it's because of years more experience as well that Mourinho has in big game management. And I think that transcends down to the players. And, perhaps no one more so than Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg. That guy is essentially becoming Mourinho on the pitch. There was a lovely moment after the final whistle when Mourinho was going around and he was so pumped up in the final minutes. On the touchline, he was cheering like Spurs winning throws and going mad. But there was a moment after the final whistle, he was going around and he was congratulating all his players. And he saw Hojbjerg and he went up to him like this real kind of snarling growl at him. And then they chest bumped. And I just think it shows that these guys are just on the same page. How do I put this in a polite way? You may have seen the clip. It certainly was in the documentary, although it was bleeped out, of the type of person or player that Mourinho wants his players to be. An intelligent something. We'll say git. An intelligent git. Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg is that intelligent git. He really is. I've said it about Eric Lamela before, but Hojbjerg takes it to whole new levels. In that game, he and Sissoko played so well. He was mopping up everything. And it was little turns. He's got that little pirouette as well where he gets away from players. He puts his foot in. He's not afraid to give away fouls in positions that are acceptable. Taking one for the team. And even, Guardiola, as his former manager at Bayern Munich, mentioned afterwards, he was talking about something about City still creating chances, even though Hojbjerg was finding the gaps. As in, finding a little space, he was trying to snuff out the spaces. It was a terrific performance. And I just think in every club he's been successful at, Mourinho has had one or two players that absolutely live and breathe his philosophy and just almost like drink the Kool-Aid, as it were. They are proper Mourinho disciples. And I can see Hojbjerg going that way. He believes utterly to the letter of what Mourinho is saying. He is his voice on the pitch. He doesn't shut up. He's constantly telling other players where to be and what to do, encouraging them. And yeah, like I say, he's just got that little bit of nous, that little bit of knowing when to take the foul, when to take the hit, when to take the yellow card, stopping play, but also very much able, as we saw with the first goal, quickly moving the ball forward to start an attacking move. And Mourinho loves him. You can tell. There's a real bond developing there. He was a player he wanted. He certainly wanted him back in last January. It's just great to see out on the football pitch. And I think it only bodes well for Tottenham. There's a lot more big game experience in there. And you haven't even got the likes of Bale and Hart, who have won things being involved in this game. But you can just see out there, I think Mourinho used an expression of it's about getting this spirit into their DNA. And when you do that, good things will come. And I think that is the thing about, Tottenham fans certainly have loved the Tottenham way. And, there was a worry about, will the Mourinho way mix with the Tottenham way? I think the Tottenham way, and I've always said this, and it's perhaps harsh and maybe a little bit too blunt and brutal, but the Tottenham way for decades has not brought any success. It just hasn't, tangible success. Tottenham way was wonderful in Bill Nick's time. It really was. And it would bring domestic cups and UEFA cups afterwards. But in terms of the top level trophies, the Tottenham way, unfortunately, has not lived up to the promise in the last, 40, 50 years, really. The Mourinho way blended with the Tottenham way. It spliced DNA, as it were. That may be the route for the future. And matches like yesterday excite me. They really do. They might not be the sexy, beautiful, free-flowing football that people want to see, but they're brutal, clinical, exciting in the sense of tactically Spurs were so organised and set up. And, we saw the highly much vaunted Pep Guardiola, one of the world's great tacticians, let's be honest, taken apart by Mourinho. He really was. We have all these young kids on the blocks, these hot new managers coming through as well. And Mourinho's showing that he can still take them down. I'm really intrigued to see what happens in these games ahead. Because like I say, I think this was a statement win to start off the run. But it can't be all for nothing if they then throw away points in the remaining games or other games. They have to use it as a momentum builder. The whole philosophy right now is the next game. The players say it, Mourinho says it. That's the mantra that has been put into this team. I don't care. Don't look at the top of the table. Don't look at who's coming down in a couple of games' time. The next game. We look to the next game. We win that next game. We march on. And I think that's it's something that Pochettino did. It's not new, but what I think it's become such a saying now, such a strict code, that they are genuinely just all focused on the match at hand. And you're seeing that with the performances and the results. So it'd be interesting to see what he does this week. Mourinho previously had a bit of not a tantrum, but he wasn't happy with the defeat, obviously, at Royal Antwerp. And he said, I've learned my lesson now. I'm not going to make lots of changes for other European games. But I do wonder, this might be the week to do it. Because Spurs play Chelsea on Sunday at Stamford Bridge. Technically, if both teams were to play their midweek matches with their strong teams, they would Chelsea would have a 2-day advantage. They play Rennes away in France on Tuesday night. Spurs play Ludogorets at home on Thursday night in the Europa League. If Mourinho decides now, especially with a home game, it's time to trust a higher number of other players to come in, then Spurs could technically have a little bit of an advantage going into Sunday's game. Because Chelsea, yes, they won 3-0 against Rennes at home, but Rennes had a first half red card. It was a very different game to what they'll have in France. And I think Lampard will have to go quite strong. He'll have to use, a fair bit of the team probably that will play on Sunday against Spurs. So if Mourinho does believe that he can change it up enough, maybe protect the likes of Kane, possibly even Hojbjerg, and maybe get away with not playing Dier in there as well. It's a gamble, of course it is. But you'd think at home against Ludogorets, who, they won 3-1 away, Spurs. Obviously, they can make 5 subs. That helps matters. But I do think if there was ever a week where maybe you try and see how you go with more changes, just to make sure, what was it, Stamford Bridge last year, Spurs winning absolutely knackered, beaten up with injuries. They just really struggled there. I think we had Bergwijn up front for Spurs, wasn't it? That just kind of shows how they were limping along. They've now got the squad, and yes, I know Mourinho wasn't happy with what happened in Belgium, but those players need minutes. He may need those players in the coming weeks as the schedule just gets mad. He may need players to step into what would be the main starting 11. And if they're not sharp and haven't got minutes, they're coming in cold. And you can't ask the likes of Dele Alli or Carlos Vinicius or Harry Winks, people like that, to suddenly come into a run of games and be at their best. So I think he needs to give minutes here and there. It's not a sentimental thing. I think it's actually to the overall advantage of the squad. So we'll see. Another massive match to come. Ludogorets first. Let's take the Mourinho way, one game at a time. Spurs have got to win that. They've got enough quality, likes of Bale, Ali come into that. I'm not sure if Lamela will be fit or not. We'll find out. Lo Celso, you'd think, would start. Winks, if he's over his little injury he had, would start. There's enough quality to do that job. And they have to show. They know there's no argument, like I said, of how Spurs are doing. They don't deserve to be in that starting 11 right now. They need to earn that spot. And I think that's a powerful motivator and one Mourinho hopefully will tap into. But let's see. So yeah, Tottenham top of the table. They might not be by the time you watch this video, but you never know. With I think Liverpool only have to win, or a draw would probably suit Spurs even better. And then Spurs will be top for a week or so. Hopefully longer. But yeah, good times, good things. Really encouraging signs at Tottenham. Great buzz behind the scenes. Everyone in the club, really, really excited at what's happening. Mourinho's in a very good place. Very happy bunny right now. And that's what you want to see. So yeah, as always, I'll be back either later in the week or next weekend. We'll see how things go. And yeah, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and I shall talk to you later. Bye.